Duh. You're watching the number one podcast in the YouTube wrestling community, and I'm your host, Jean-Paul Laek, and this is Rope Break Family. Here we are, we're throwing it back, me solo, Monday Night Raw review, and, it's not a good show, and you guys all know this, ratings going down, all this stuff, but this show has just been awful. The past couple of weeks, it's just been 3 hours of just the most boring wrestling on television. Like, is it worse than AEW? Some people say Raw's the worst show, some say Dynamite. I can tell you one thing, I'd rather watch 2 hours of Dynamite than 3 hours of Raw, just because of the sheer boredom that this show induces is not very good. But we're going to go segment through segment so you guys would just hear how bad it is if you missed last night's show. But before we begin, just want to thank everybody, all the support you give us, all the videos, everything. We did all the weekly shows last week. Sorry about the mess up with everybody who likes to join us live for SmackDown. Had a little bit of a technical difficulties, but it's all good. We should be up and running this weekend. And thank you for all the support on Impact Homecoming and everything. Go check out that great review that Juan did. But let's begin here. Monday Night Raw opens up. MVP, Bobby Lashley, they make their way to the ring. Of course, no more girls, no more champagne, no nonsense, everything. And MVP pretty much says, yeah, Goldberg, yeah, he's badass. He's a legend, all this stuff. All these men fear him, but Bobby Lashley's not a man. He's a monster. You can't beat him. He's just putting over Lashley and everything. So then, Goldberg, he eventually comes out. He makes his way to the ring, his music. And the one good thing is when he mentions Goldberg, the fans start booing him. So that was really cool. I did appreciate that. Then Goldberg comes out and he pretty much says, Lashley, he, when he first came down the ramp last week, he he feared Goldberg, all this stuff. And he's like, fear the spear, that's typical bullshit. He's like, and you want to talk about how old I am? Doesn't matter if I'm 35, 45, 105, I'm still going to kick your ass, all this stuff. He's like, Chi-Town, it's not your town. It's, it's a Coliseum and I'm the gladiator, all this stuff. Eventually, he just says, so at SummerSlam, you're next. So, we get the typical, catchphrase there from Goldberg, decent stuff by MVP in the beginning. And then as Goldberg, he's leaving up the ramp, we see his son sitting at ringside. Lashley gets out, they get in his face and, start going back and forth. Lashley, like I said, gets in his Goldberg's son's face. So Goldberg then spears MVP and then he shouts at Lashley. And he's like, if you talk to my son again, I'll kill him, I'll kill you, this and that. They're all just going back and forth, trying to add some intensity to it. I don't know. Again, nobody's really excited. Nobody cares. You're not going to take the title off Lashley, put it on Goldberg. So this is just for a big marquee match at SummerSlam. And then we get a 2-on-1 handicap match with Veer and Shanky with Jinder Mahal versus Drew McIntyre. And this is a feud that we said, okay, Drew and Jinder could be legit, just something for Drew to do in the meantime till you put him back in the title picture or whatever you want to do with him. And they somehow found a way to make this the least interesting they could do it. And with this, handicap match here, it should have been something where the heels got the advantage and they won, by cheating, using the numbers. But instead, Drew wins this thing because at the end of it, he has them all set up and Jinder comes in with a steel chair because he doesn't want his guys to lose in a handicap match. How embarrassing is that? So, they do lose anyway because the winner via disqualification is Drew. Because, like I said, Mahal comes in with the steel chair and, he hits McIntyre in the gut when he's setting up the Claymore kick. But then after the match, he pretty much grabs his his Claymore, and the heels all have chairs, and he starts swinging his Claymore, knocking the chairs out of their hands, and they're all like, so they run out of there. Again, does anybody care about this? No. So then, then we see Nia Jax and Shayna Baszler. They're staying backstage, and Nia says, if we're shocked about what we just saw, wait until we see what she does to Rhea Ripley. So then we see a commercial break, and we come back. Drew's backstage, and he's stopped for a comment. He says he didn't finish the job, even though those bloodthirsty Chicago fans wanted it. Drew says he's happy Jinder got away because now he'll be in his head for another week. He's a nice guy, so he'll let Jinder choose the hospital, the graveyard, or his sword, Angela. So, then we see Rhea Ripley versus Nia Jax and Shayna Baszler. And I mean, this is all right. It's a book out of nowhere. I mean, they're kind of like, we're really beating each other up, really brutal. Like Nia Jax hit Samoan drop against the barricade. Rhea Ripley actually got Nia Jax busted up in this thing. And, I think, what was it? Jax, Jax lifts Ripley and slams her, and her face, like I said, her face got cut somehow. I don't know if it was. I didn't see the exact spot. I don't know if it was on maybe. Does Rhea have spikes on her gear? Or is that just on her entrance jacket? You know what I mean? I don't know if something maybe got her or something, a punch or something. She got broken open the hard way, but I don't know. She was bleeding pretty good, and like I said, her. So at the end of this thing, though, we see Shayna. She gets on the apron. Ripley gets in her face. Jax runs, but Ripley avoids her and rolls her up for the win. So Ripley's the winner of this thing. After the match, we see Nia and Shayna. They argue in the ring. Baszler takes off her jacket, and the fans cheer. They continue arguing until Shayna leaves the ring. Ripley comes in from behind, kicks Nia Jax in the head, and then attempts a riptide. It was almost like when Kevin Nash powerbombed the Giant. It looked like shit, like complete shit, but it's like, I guess they did it anyway. But that was what it was. I mean, I don't I know you're gonna obviously build Rhea up. She's in the match at SummerSlam, but it just seemed like such a weird thing to do if that's how you were gonna split the tag team of Jax and Baszler. I mean, I don't know. We see TBar and Mace versus Mustafa Ali and Mansur, and this is how the first match should have went. The smaller guys use their speed and everything to try to be like, okay, yeah, we can beat these big guys, but eventually, the big guys take over. And then we see Ali. He goes up top. T-Bar kicks he kicks T-Bar into the ropes, crotching Ali. Mansur goes to the top rope, but Mace distracts him. T-Bar yanks him down and hits a knee to the face, and the T-Bar hits a discus boot for the win. So we see the winners are Mace and T-Bar. Then after the match, Ali, he berates Mansur. T-Bar and Mace come in from behind and stare at their old leader. Ali shows Mansur out of the ring and takes the double choke slam in his wake. So we see there, it's like he wasn't going to join up with his old guys. He wasn't going to dump Mansur. That's his new partner, his new tag team partner. So that's really cool that we see them together because they kind of have a good look, similar build, and everything, similar style in the ring. So, that's cool that he stuck with his new partner. It's a shame that we can't have these guys, in the actual tag division, doing something instead of just this feud that, nobody's talking about the belts. Nobody's talking about anything like that. But then we see a replay of Charlotte versus Nikki from last week, and Nikki's warming up backstage for their no holds barred match. So then we see Charlotte Flair. She comes to the ring. She's cutting a promo, and she pretty much says why Simone Biles withdrew from the Olympics, and she's like, now I understand because all this pressure and everything, when you're the best. She's like, she pretty much says that she kind of felt that, like, being an 11-time champion, all this stuff. But she's confident now in saying that using the money in the bank is a cowardly way. She's been cashed in on 3 times. She gets a kendo stick, all this stuff. She's like, yeah, I'm going to beat Nikki's ass with this. And she's like, tonight she will sacrifice herself in a match where there's no disqualification and no countouts. Anything goes. And then Nikki comes from behind, hits Charlotte with a chair. Charlotte rolls out of and looks stunned. Nikki jumps around the ring. So good promo by Charlotte Flair. I like Nikki Kross, Nikki Ash, the superhero gimmick. I really don't like at all. I think it's stupid. It really takes away from the legitimacy of the women's division when you see people like Charlotte and Rhea and then like a Becky Lynch or whoever. I think because if it would have just been Nikki Kross, it would have been a lot better. The superhero gimmick to me is complete shit, but it is what it is. Then Eva Marie and Piper Niven are backstage, and Kevin Patrick asks about Natalya's injury, and Eva says, who cares? And then she says that she's more concerned with Alexa Bliss and that gross little doll. And then, they're making fun of the evolution. She's like, that's stupid. And, they're pretty much going to get revenge. So then we see Piper Niven with Eva Marie versus Tamina. And, this... I really didn't know what they were going to do here because they're really pushing Piper Niven, but also, would you think Tamina's going to want to get revenge and should get revenge? So I was kind of torn who I wanted to see win here. But at the end of this thing, we see Tamina. She hits pretty much a Samoan drop, and then, pins do drop there 1, 2, 3, or excuse me, Piper Niven 1, 2, 3. So we see the first loss for Piper Niven. Does it really affect her? No, because nobody cares about this show. It's not like, oh my God, this is a big loss. Everybody's talking about it all over the world. Oh, Hogan slammed Andre. No, nobody cares. Nobody will remember this in 2 days. And then we see Damien Priest. He stops with Riddle backstage, and Riddle's going on about like, oh, I had my match with Omos. He broke my scooter. I got a new one, this and that. Priest is like, aren't you afraid he's going to kick your ass again? Like, look at the dude. He's huge. He's like, no, bro. I got the blood of Randy Orton coursing through my veins or something like that. And, he pretty much goes off. So we see a little backstage interaction between them. And then, he asks Priest why he's going to be on Miz TV. And he says that he wants, to talk about something. And if they step out of line, he'll make sure Morrison is in a wheelchair just like the Miz. So then we see Miz and Morrison. They're in the ring for Miz TV. They introduce Damien Priest. And they keep going on back and forth about match with Bad Bunny, everything like that. And, about going off, ripping off Sheamus's mask last week and everything like that. Priest says that they're out of their minds. He was cleared to wrestle. He showed up to fight. And, he's a badass in his book. But Priest asks if Miz is actually injured. He's like, is it your legs or is it, what's in between those legs that's injured, So obviously Miz gets pissed off. He's been in the business for 16 years, never injured, blah, blah, blah. Everything going back and forth. Morrison starts to get pissed off. And Priest says that no kid wants to be a sidekick or a loudmouth jackass who will use anyone, pretty much saying that Miz is the loudmouth jackass and Morrison is, the useless sidekick. So, obviously he's pushing their buttons, pissing them off. Morrison's getting mad. Miz is getting mad. And, they set up, this just sets up a match. You know what I mean? And it's the one thing that sucks is these guys are so good. This should be, one of them should be the U.S. champ, and this should be a feud. There shouldn't be no Miz involved. But instead, we get teases of something that could be great, but instead it's just muddied down. It's just bullshit. Like I said, WWE just finds a way to take these matches that on paper they look good, but then when you see them, you're like, man, I could care less about this. And that's what this was. Damien Priest versus John Morrison. Obviously, both these guys are really good, but we've seen this stuff before. And the Miz keeps getting involved, using the drip stick, that stupid thing, like the little pool toy that shoots the water and everything. But I mean, really good stuff. Morrison, he kind of had Priest on his back. He was standing on the apron and he did like a flip, into the ring. So, holding Priest and stuff. So, I mean, really good athletic match. Like I said, it's just, you're not going to remember it in 2 days from now, and you don't care because it wasn't made to feel special or anything like that. So, we saw, like I said, he went for the Starship Pain, Morrison, but he grabbed his foot. Morrison hits a standing shooting star press for a near fall. Morrison lands some kicks and he looks for the springboard, but Priest catches him for a reverse attitude adjustment and then a sit-out choke slam for the win. So then Damien Priest, like I said, he's the winner, but as soon as it's over, Sheamus attacks Priest. Ricochet comes down and he hits Sheamus with a springboard drop kick, and then Priest knocks out Morrison out of the ring, and it seems that we're going to be getting a tag match, which is exactly what happened. Because WWE, they're like, man, we have 3 hours to book this show. What should we do? Well, the first thing you should do is probably turn it to 2 hours. Then you don't have to book so much garbage. So then we get this tag match. Of course, the baby faces won. You know what I mean? Does anybody really care? No. At the end of this thing, Ricochet hits a springboard moonsault on the floor. Morrison rolls up Priest for a 2, but Priest hits the Reckoning for the win. So we'll see where this goes. Hopefully, it is Damien Priest versus Sheamus at SummerSlam. Damien Priest, your new U.S. champion. And then we see Bobby Lashley and MVP there backstage, and Lashley is asked about what happened tonight, and he says he hopes Goldberg brings his son to SummerSlam so he can watch him annihilate him. Then Riddle makes his way to the ring for a big reaction, almost his interview backstage, and he says Riddle's scooter came first, his spine comes next. And then we get Riddle versus Omos, and Riddle tries to take advantage early, jumps Omos before the bell, everything. Omos just slings him off, throws him around, throws him in the timekeeper's area, all this stuff, He, connects with some running knees and a springboard knee, but then he runs it almost. He gets smashed with a clothesline. So Riddle hit all his best offense, almost was able to just shake it off. And then he lifts Riddle for the two-handed choke slam for the 1, 2, 3, kind of where he grabs you by the skull, picks you up, slams you down. So, obviously this match went the way I thought it should have went. So I have no problems with it. And we see Alexa Bliss and Lily. They're sitting in the playground. Bliss asks how we like the Lily-lution, and she says Lily has been inspiring people for a long time. Jack the Ripper, the Zodiac Killer, all this stuff. So Piper Niven knocks her down, starts kicking her up, or kicking her in the gut. And then Eva Marie walks in, lifts Lily, and says that she's ickier in person. And then they leave Lily and then as they leave, Lily stands on her own. So garbage. You know, the Fiend has been fired. Bray Wyatt is done. Turn Alexa Bliss back to normal. I mean, she's a good actor. She portrays this creepy gimmick, but wasn't this all because of the Fiend? Oh, but then I guess they tried to say it wasn't. But why am I trying to figure out WWE booking? You know, it's easier to figure out brain surgery and rocket science. So then we see, you know, Karrion Kross versus Keith Lee. So, you know, this was all right. Pretty much, you know, second verse, same as the first. Pretty much same thing we saw last week. You know, Keith Lee looks good. Karrion Kross looks good. You know, as we go to commercial break, Karrion Kross is dominating. We come back from commercial break. He's still dominating. You know, he hits that big, you know, punch to the back of the neck. He gets the straight jacket on. But Lee, you know, he gets his fingers up in there. He fights out of it. You know, he sends him into the ropes. Boom, picks him up. Spirit bomb, 1, 2, 3. So Keith Lee wins this one. And, you know, we're going to be seeing this, what a couple people are reporting. It's going to be Karrion Kross is going to be losing on Raw until he gets Scarlett, and then Scarlett's going to be like his, you know, pretty much the thing that just unleashes the beast and just unlocks his true potential or some shit like that. I don't know. I think it's stupid, especially when tomorrow night we're going to see him supposed to be portrayed like a badass, but then on Monday Night Raw he gets beat. But I don't know. Hopefully this means that they're going to do something for Keith Lee, and it's not just a storyline of, oh yeah, Kross is a loser, but so are you, Keith Lee, so you won't beat anyone else except him. But I don't know. We see Rhea Ripley. She's interviewed backstage, and she says her match with Nia was brutal, but it's nothing compared to the no-holds-barred match. Everything is legal, and she'll be watching closely. She hopes Nikki beats the hell out of Charlotte, but regardless, she's going to win her belt back at SummerSlam. So then we see a 24/7 championship match, Reginald versus Akira Tozawa. Reginald wins. I don't care. Moving on. Then we see Nikki Ash. She's interviewed backstage, and she says that she's never been in such a dangerous match, and she doesn't know what to expect. Wasn't she in some kind of like a match like that with Asuka? Or maybe it was just a normal match. I don't know, but I could have sworn in NXT she was in some kind of no holds barred or, you know, some kind of brutal match. Maybe it was just, you know, a match that they let them fight. Because I think there was a spot somebody went through a table or announce table or something. Maybe I'm combining matches. I don't know. If I'm wrong, excuse me. But, you know, I don't think this is the most brutal match she's been in. And she says, but that's all part of being almost a superhero. Again, this whole gimmick is so stupid. You're wearing a cape, you're the champion, just call yourself a superhero. If you're going to go all in on this garbage, go all in. Don't, you know, this just sucks. And, you know, she pretty much says that, you know, she'll prove, you know, that belief is everything, all, you know, just the rah, you know, stupid bullshit nobody cares about. So then we see the no holds barred match, Nikki Ash versus Charlotte Flair. And, you know, this was pretty good, kind of just like a continuation again of what we saw last week. You know, the match between these two. Charlotte Flair obviously won that. You know, now here we see Nikki Ash. You know, Charlotte again dominates this thing, and, you know, real cocky, like she goes for a cover. Or pretty much, you know, she jumps off the Kross jumps off the barricade, but Charlotte catches her and turns her around into a powerbomb through the announce desk. So then Charlotte, you know, she drags Nikki's body into the ring and pins her. She just does like the 1 foot, you know, her arms out doing like almost like the Flair pose. 1, 2, boom, but Nikki kicks out. So Charlotte, she gets pissed, starts kicking her in the ribs. Then she waits for her to get up. You know, she puts a table in the corner. Charlotte runs for a spear, but Nikki dodges it. So Flair goes through the table, and then Nikki crawls to make the pin, but Flair kicks out. So Nikki's look of anguish turns to anger. She, you know, and then we see this intensity. She drags Charlotte through the ropes and hits a spinning neck breaker for the win. And I don't like that ending. I like everything except when Flair kicked out of the table spot. It should have been she went through the table, Nikki picked her up, kind of draped her in the ropes, then hit the spinning, because the kick out of that to then just get, I know it's her finisher, but she took so long to hit it. She must have had her like the Orton draping DDT, like a setup like that. She must have had her in that for at least 20 seconds. It seemed like an eternity that she had her in there, was positioning her, making sure everything was right, you know, before she hit the move. So it took way too long. I'm like, oh, Flair's going to kick out of this. She didn't. So the ending was really flat to me. But we see, you know, replays after the match. Nikki, you know, she hugs her women's championship. She will face Charlotte Flair and Rhea Ripley at SummerSlam. So, you know, that was Monday Night Raw. Again, tell me a segment of the show that really stood out that you're like, oh man, I got to watch this again on YouTube. You know, this was so great. You know, a match you're going to be talking about for weeks and weeks to come. There isn't any. And that just isn't this week's show or last week's show or the previous week's show. That's been Raw for months, and that will be Raw for months until they really do something about it. But, the way we see them firing talent, which we'll talk about some of that, later on this week when we get more details. But, the way that they're just burning through talent, who the hell knows what WWE's plans are? But we just got to sit back and wait and see. But guys, thank you so much for watching. And, make sure you follow us on all the social media so you don't miss out on anything. That's Rope Break on Facebook, the original Rope Break on Instagram, the OG Rope Break on Twitter. And of course, follow us on our new outlets, the original Rope Break on Twitch and TikTok. And of course, right here, the home of the number one podcast in the YouTube wrestling community, the original Rope Break. So we will see you tonight with NXT.